How do you identify yourself, race and ethnicity?
Oh, I would identify as an Arab American, but that's not kind of like one of the options. The options for me, like if I were to like choose like, oh, what is your race? You know, it's either white as we consider it, because like North Africans are considered that, or other.
Black and African American.
Japanese American.
Primarily, it used to be African American, but I'm a lot of other things besides that, so I've been trying, mixed. That's been working really well so far. I've always just put mixed.
Race would be white. Ethnicity, my mom's Cajun French and my dad is German and Swedish.
I identify myself as Filipino most of the time.
For me, I feel like it's a little harder because my mom was born in Puerto Rico, but she's half Hispanic. So technically I'm like 25% Hispanic, while the rest of me is white. So I guess the majority rules in this case, so I do see myself as being more white. Then from my dad's side, his ancestors have been here since the late 1600s, so American all the way, I guess.
Identify as white.
I identify as African American.
My race, I identify myself as Caucasian.
Well, my family's Puerto Rican, so I consider myself to be Hispanic in ethnicity. But racially, I normally say white because I'm a very Americanized family. So.
Black and African American.
I've never considered myself African American, just black, because like I was raised, thinking that if you're American, like if you take that hyphen, you have to have willingly came here, and I didn't, so there you go. I'm black.
Business management is my major. I don't have a minor.
English major. Still thinking of what minors to add on, but yeah.
I'm a junior theater arts and communication studies double major.
An English and theater arts double major and a minor in business law.
My academic major is pre-law and psychology, and my minor is creative writing.
My major is English. I also am a pre-med student.
Theater arts major and a digital arts minor.
I'm an English and digital arts major, double major with a creative writing minor.
I'm a psychology major and a creative writing minor. I'm a social science major with a focus in history and sociology and a double minor of anthropology and religious studies.
So pretentious.
My major is molecular biology. My minors are theater arts and chemistry.
A double major in English and business administration.
I'm an English major with a creative writing minor and management minor.
I'm an English major with a journalism minor.
The large majority of racism I deal with in the classroom isn't directed towards me. It's things that I witness, it's things that I see. More student to student, or students trying to explain a concept in answering whatever question they've been posed. Not so much towards each other. I don't often see a lot of racism towards each other, but then again, most of my classes are predominantly white. It's towards an other group that they don't have to actually face-to-face say it to.
Right. I took American history last semester, and it was on the Civil War, and it was the professor. He was talking about how the KKK wasn't really terrorists and things like that, and that kind of shocked me. And when I approached him about it, he didn't even remember saying it, so.
I don't think I've ever really had to face an issue with my race in terms of real discrimination. There have always been like jokes, especially when you're Hispanic, people kind of tend to make the joke of like, well, you're all Mexican. So I've always dealt with that kind of thing, especially in high school. It's never been of a real issue. Like I've never felt oppressed by it. It's just kind of a joke that people will toss out, and and it's not in. I've never experienced it in a malevolent spirit.
There's associations with how I look and how I dress and things like that, and in middle school a little bit, because kids don't really kind of understand the effects of words that they have on others, like. And so I would get comments like jokes and things like that about like terrorists and everything, and all that. And it's, you know, the usual thing, and you laugh it off, but you move on. But I understand that I'm not like a lot of other people, and they don't have that kind of strength to kind of move on from that. And so you see it less as you grow older, or maybe I'm just less aware of it because I kind of program myself that way.
I've seen it happen. There'll be times when we're reading something for a class assignment and it'll have like the N-word in there, and people in the class that will discuss that section will mention the word, or they'll quote it. And they'll be like, and if they think that they quote it, it's okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they feel. That's how they like morally justify it, but it's still hurtful. And even like the professors try to stop that from happening. They'll say when we're reading this book, not just when but like they'll say before they're reading the book, like, please do not say this word or any hurtful words that may appear in this book. I'm teaching this book, but I don't want you to say those things, because we don't want to have that in the class. We don't want people to feel uncomfortable, and that should not be said. But still, students do it anyway. It happened in one of my classes last year, and then a year before that too.
I was upset. I was very upset. And then there was another African American student, and he was like, just let it go. We're just here to learn. Don't do anything about it. So that kind of made me feel cornered.
It's a very taboo like subject to talk about, and then so when you see it happening before you, like a lot of people don't want to engage themselves in it because they don't really know what that's going to make other people think of them, I suppose. So I mean, I would be the very first to stand up and tell you about yourself in class. Absolutely. If you're doing that.
But standing up against it in class usually comes with that whole, but why can't you take a joke mentality?
Exactly. So then it goes back down to, it escalates to something, and then quickly, as soon as you address it, then it goes down to blaming the victim. Oh, but you.
Yeah.
Like,
why would you call us out on that?
I've also run into the, you're making too much of a stir, we need to move on. And that's very
from
much
teachers, though.
From teachers, and I understand wanting to shut it down. So it made sense in the situation, but it was still. They didn't do it to the joke. They did it to, you need to not address that they did that.
Right. Because the joke is socially acceptable, while calling them out on the joke is not.
Yeah.
Right.
So, do you guys feel like there is diversity in your department of studies? So in the English department, in the creative writing, even though they're kind of combined, managing and business.
You're joking, right? There are about last year there was only me and you, like blacks. There were some, there were Hispanics and Asians, but like it's very limited. Especially in like classrooms, you can see like, if anything, you have 2 or 3 minorities, and that's about it in both of my majors.
In psychology, at least in the classes that I've had, I don't have to look around and see if I'm the only black person in the room, or if I'm the only person that's colored at all. There are certainly other people of other racial ethnicities that are in class. My very first psychology class, there was somebody who was African American, there was somebody who was Spanish, there was 2 transfer students who came from Korea. There's a lot of diversity, I think, in the psychology department from what I've seen. But that's student-wise. I would say teacher-wise, not so much.
I think there definitely is diversity at Stetson as a whole. In the English department, there's not as much diversity. But in my pre-med students, in my pre-med classes, there are a lot of diverse students. I've seen, black students, Latino students, Asian students, white students. So there's a lot of diversity that I've had in science classes. But like I've said, English department, I haven't experienced as much diversity.
I would say for the English department, I'm not seeing a lot of diversity. There's a lot of white students, like that's the majority of the class, and then other ethnicities are still the minority in this. But in other departments, I've seen different. But
yes and no. In a way that in students, I can see a little bit of diversity, at least in the classes that I've taken so far, and they'll get-togethers that the English department holds. But as far as I know, even not. Not in this English one right here, but just taking English classes in the past, it was always a white professor, different places they've come from, but we rarely have someone of a minority teaching English.
When you guys say about the professors, is it that your professors are majority just they're white?
Yeah.
Are any of your professors African American, Asian, Native American, or Latino?
No, they're all white.
So are your professors African American, Asian, Native American, or Latino?
No. I don't think I've ever had a teacher that was any other race than white.
So do you have any professors that are African American, Asian, Native American, or Latino?
Not currently, no. I did have one chemistry professor last year, but that was the only
Like minority professor?
Minority professor, correct.
I've had an advisor, Dr. Campbell, in the English department, and that's really it.
In the English department, I know Dr. Cater, but other than that, I haven't personally had a class that I've taken yet with a non-white professor.
Non-white. Lesson plans.
Yeah, my senior research class, for example, the professor pretty much gave us the freedom to, research any author, regardless of race or sex or ethnicity. So I don't think there's any restrictions at all placed over students on, what they choose to learn.
Dr. Sutherland, Dr. Queen Sutherland, because there's two of them. Is that not the best name? I know, she's so great.
It is an April.
In her class that I took with her, we actually studied the Bible from different women's point of view. But then once we analyzed the actual text, the actual Hebrew text, then we would go through, and the primary sources she would give us would be written by people of all different sorts of ethnicities. Fantastic. We talked about womanism in the Bible, which is sort of African American feminism. We talked about how Hagar represents something completely different to Muslim women. It was very interesting to learn it from so many different points of view.
Professional communication does. She does a lot to make sure that we're accepting and open to different ideas and stuff.
It's hard being a science student and kind of trying to think about this stuff, but if a professor in the humanities, like in history, I can imagine especially, or sociology, or religious studies, or things like that, kind of, if they don't go into the proper amount of detail, as well as the correct details, I think it could definitely cause a lot of damage. In high school, I remember I took a world history class, and it was one of the most unbiased classes I've ever taken, because there was no offense or negative light really cast on any group. Maybe individual people, but no group. And I think for the most part that holds true. I think that for the most part, when people are in a professional environment, they will try to facilitate the material in such a way that it is, that it's not causing anyone harm. And so, that might not be true in classes that are by definition very opinionated, like maybe sociology classes or business things, or but I think that if you're in a class and you're learning about a particular people group or something, that it'll probably be taught to you in the best way that professor can. And even if that professor has personal biases, I think that it's their duty to kind of put those aside.
Mm-hmm. First time that someone reads something other or an Eastern play was actually with Dr. Snook's class, Understanding Drama, and I was really excited because we had I think 2 or 3 plays. That one was Japanese, one Chinese, and I don't remember what the other one.
And Snow in Midsummer.
Yeah, so I really like those, and even though it's something she probably does, and I like that she's trying to incorporate these little things, which she probably has a hard time doing with kind of what it is expected of her.
It's kind of awkward for me because when you hear a teacher talking about things that that the African American vernacular, and then they try to speak it, and just like, I don't sound like that. It's just, I don't understand.
What class was that?
Text criticism theory with Dr. Farrow. He goes off on lots of tangents, and one of them was how he had to write a report on African American vernacular. Yep.
I took a text criticism theory class, and we talked about race, especially in one of the novels, The Heart of Darkness. And it was really hard to discuss because the things that were said were not positive things about race, and it made a lot of us really uncomfortable even talking about it. And the professor was kind of like saying that I think the book does more. She said, I think the book does more harm than good. Like, she was trying to teach something about the book, something that we should learn from it, but at the same time, to get to that moral, you had to go through all of these horrible things that were being said about race to begin with.
I've heard the N-word a couple of times by people who, in their opinion, they think that, oh, well, we're trying to move on from this, so it's just a word, we can just say it, but it still makes them really uncomfortable.
I never said it, like, ever, and I don't like it when other people say it.
I know a lot of people like to shy away from race when they talk about it openly. I think it's sort of the elephant in the room, unfortunately. But, I think talking about it is actually a progressive thing. We can, get other people's opinions from different ethnicities and races and cultures, so that, somebody else who sees it from a different perspective and say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So you actually have that, that barrier is demolished. So you have that bridge. So you say, okay, well, I thought you were like this, but now, I know the truth. It's sort of getting rid of that ignorance when you sort of talk about racism.
A lot of people feel that, okay, we've talked about it enough, it's been brought up enough, but they don't seem to realize it's still in this society. People are still doing things, people are still saying things, and acting in ways that are inappropriate for today's society, especially with the beliefs that all people are equal, and we're trying to operate on that. And not everyone actually believes that all people are equal. Not everybody's going to act like all people are equal. And you have to be able to see the extreme version of it to now. And it's gotten better. It's not as good as it could be, but I think with time it'll definitely get there. I just think our generation's kind of closed-minded. A lot of close-minded, really, and a lot of very self-centered, very self-focused. It's all about us and me, and it's not going to help progress anything until people start to actually open their minds.
No, not much. I mean, I know that they're trying to, expand their racial identity, the cultural identity of Stetson, and by bringing in more students of minority races.
My first 2 years at Stetson, I didn't think there was much diversity. It wasn't until this year that I started noticing that there was more diversity, and I think that's because now it's starting to develop, it's starting to grow, it's starting to become more diverse, but it wasn't really diverse when I first started going here.
I've only been here for 3 years. I'm a transfer student, so it's sort of remained at a steady plateau, but there are, compared to, I would say, other schools, Stetson does have a lot of minority students, in the student body.
One thing that I do notice that I don't know if troubling is the right word, but it's interesting, is I got here and I never really realized how many African American students we had until a couple of weeks ago, because I always grew up around African American people, and when I got here, they just kind of maybe pushed to the background in a way. I never see African American students, very rarely in my classes.
I feel like a lot of people think there's a lot of diversity because when they do go out and to the quad or whatever, there are minority students, but they're all talking to each other. You don't really see them separating out of that group because of that, I don't know how willing segregation of the races and ethnicities. But if you were to think about Stetson as a whole and think about everybody you saw during the day, you would like counted them all out, you would notice that there's a huge majority who are white and then a very few minority.
I think that as far as the board, it's going to take a lot of push on their part, but there's so many levels of, it's not just our school and then just the board that does our counties, colleges or whatever. Like, it's not just that, it goes all the way up to state level. Like, the people who
it goes above state level.
It goes really to national if
It
you're
does.
talking about it, because you can't get regionally accredited when you don't have the right curriculum.
And so it has
what
to be
is
a
the right
push
curriculum
from all those levels. It has to be a trickle down
But I
effect.
think it can start from professors, because professors hear students loudest. And not only that, but they have the influence to go up to the people above them and talk to them about the issues. So I think the real I guess I don't know how to say it. The real vehicle for change is going to be them, because the students, we have been screaming for years and years. People have not heard us until recently, but we have been talking about this for a long time.
And I think the professors are starting to hear it.
And I think the professors are starting to hear it.
They know.
And they're starting to act on it. And they're starting to try and bring it into the classroom. And by doing so, bring it into the school and make it part of the school.
I think there should, I would love to see more diversity in the departments I'm studying in, or the fields I'm studying in, but I just imagine it being an incredibly slow process. I mean, if we, like, for the theater department, for example, if we want to, like, produce more plays by, different playwrights, playwrights from different minority groups, then we need to be able to have the cast for that. But we don't have the cast for that because the student body isn't as diverse as Stetson makes it out to seem. So it's just harder to do that. I think the professors within the department would love to do that. We just don't have the bodies or the students who are interested in theater to produce those types of works.
Yeah, I think they should actually think about creating classes specifically designed for the underheard voices, you know.
Like the marginalized.
Yes. You know, like I said previously, the literary canon, you know, for many, many years has been dominated by the white male. And, you know, that's just the way things are. It's not really, you know, there's nothing you can do about that history-wise, but I think if the Stetson administration created a class that was open to those unheard voices, you know, the black male or the Native American female or something, you know, that would really, you know, draw students in, maybe even minorities into the English department.
I think what they should do is probably make it a gen ed. I know they have it as a gen ed now to take, like, gender studies and African American studies. They have those classes that you can take, but you're not required to take them. It's like, in order to get your gender studies requirement, you can also take these other classes, and that counts for that. Like, and you don't have to fulfill the gender studies requirement because you can fulfill something else, and that takes its place. I think it should be a requirement, not something that you can select from, but a requirement to learn about, like, different kinds of race and, like, even different religions too. I think that everybody should be exposed to that, because then it'll make us be better, nicer to other people, and to understand, like, things about them we wouldn't have thought, or to put things into perspective, really.
I wouldn't mind it so much if it was like an on and off semester. Like one semester we would have like an entire ethnicities course where people just learn like the different like cultures, and the next semester we have complete European, and the next semester it could be a mixture of both of them. That's fine with me. I just feel like if it's like 1 year out of the 4 years a year, they only had all these cultural classes, and then like the next 3 years it's just European or white American history. I feel like that's not being diversified. I feel like somebody just took an interest and they just rolled with it for that 1 year, and then just completely dismissed it for the next 3 years because apparently nobody else took an interest in it. And I feel like students do take an interest in it, but I feel like faculty members don't think that we do and just assume. And it's always that assumption thing.
The school, I think, would, not just the professors, but the school itself would do a lot better in continuing to promote diversity the way that they're trying to make their message out to be, which is, that was part of the reason why, you know, my sister and I came here, was because they were promising diversity, because I feel like that's something they really want to get to.
Right.
The professors, most of the professors I've seen either trying very hard to introduce that diversity in the class or at least bringing it up in discussion. And students, I feel like if you're not a minority, you might not be aware of it. And if there's no really nice way to say, you know, maybe we shouldn't always look at something from your point of view.
Right, it's very hard.
I agree with that entirely.
Yeah. It's hard to say it politically correctly.
Yes.
I don't know. I just almost feel like Stetson just needs to be more culturally diverse. I mean, if you're going to market that, you need to have it. You can't just like lie. And to be very blunt about it. But that's just my thoughts.
My name is Deanne Ennis.
My name is Drew Knightsey.
My name is Salma Blackbear.
Ashari Osei.
Kira Nicole Patchett.
Ashley Sullivan.
Alex Sullivan.
Michael Young Galvez.
My name is Casey Kelly.
Kevin Serrano.
Carter Davis.
China Powell.
Leah Smith.
Amanda Towner.